We love where we live. Aroha kauana mātou ki te kāinga. Lots of clean, fresh water, a healthy moana, unique plants and animals, some of which aren't found anywhere else. A region that's adaptable and resilient to challenges like climate change, well-connected communities, and is developing with nature in mind. That's why we care for our place, the mighty Waikato. And we know you care about your place too. Make your Waikato even better with us. Tō Waikato, kia wana.
Cheekers.
Righto, councillors, welcome to our council meeting on the 28th of August 2025. We'll open with a karakia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, councillors. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, ki makinakina ki uta, ki mataratara ki tai, he aka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. All right, councillors, we've got a few items on the agenda today, and we are opening with a deputation. Just seeing as we have externals in the room, do you want to just run through health and safety?
Kia tātou. Just a short reminder that in the event of an emergency, please follow the directions of staff. The nearest exit in the event of a fire is through the main chamber doors in which you came in, turn to the right onto the footpath, and the assembly point is across the road via the crossing, being mindful of the traffic. If you need any assistance, please just let a member of staff know and we'll be happy to help.
All right. So we'll start with our deputation. This is on page 6 of your agendas, councillor, and we have Trevor Simpson representing the Plug group. Welcome, Trevor. And just so we'll start with clear instructions. Happy to give you 10 minutes to speak to this deputation today, and if you want to, within that time, allow time for questions from councillors, we can do that as well. Thank you. Just need to get a red light on there. There we go. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm representing the members of the Primary Land Users Group. It's PLUG, as we call ourselves. This group was born out of the Plan Change 1 implementation. We represent sheep farmers, beef farmers, dairy farmers, horticultural, market gardeners, forestry and the extraction industries, which is the quarry industries. We needed a voice in PC1, and now it transpires we need a voice on other pressing issues. Over the last 5 years, we have endeavoured to understand how council operates, especially in the flood protection, land drainage and consent issues with water takes. Enormous costs are involved in this area, yet at the same time the region benefits many times over by having all this infrastructure and water takes in place. We are very conscious that some costs are necessary, but also that ratepayers are being told to pay millions of dollars of unnecessary costs because council is taking a far too conservative approach to the present regulations. We have highlighted two areas of concern in our printed agenda today. The two topics are permitted activity status for existing flood protection and drainage assets in their entirety. By that, what I mean is if something has been replaced like for like, the whole concept is under permitted activity, not just bits and pieces. And the renewal of consents for water takes for all utilities in the region. This is power stations, towns, cities, everything where the ratepayer benefits. We wish to try and curb the growing levels of red tape and costs, financial means, time, mental stress that comes with the process of renewing consented water takes for utilities. I'm not talking about private enterprise. We are recommending that where there have been no significant changes to the local environment and where the consent holder has a good record of compliance with the consent conditions, then they be able to renew the consent without having to go through a public notification process with its associated costs. I'll give you a small example. The Tikawata Irrigation Society, a non-profit organisation that supplies water to the District Council for Tikawata Township and surrounding areas. They are in the process right now of renewing their consent, 25 years, I presume. $200,000 in climbing, the cost to renew that consent. They haven't got it yet, so we're probably going to be heading for 300,000. Now that is just to carry on doing something that they're doing now. Not one nut or bolt is changing. And who's paying that? Ratepayer. So we have to have a way, and I believe we have a way. Now and in the future, this council needs to do everything in its power to make rates more affordable for ratepayers. Presently, this does not happen. Council needs to agree on a small number of non-negotiable objectives per triennium, and I'm talking about this room here, and instruct the Chief Executive to achieve these objectives. What we have presented today could be two of those objectives. The chairperson has publicly stated that red tape must be reduced. Last September, council were presented with a paper from staff indicating some intent for permitted activity for the above points, along with council being conservative with interpretation of the rules and regulations. We have a letter dated March this year from Chris Bishop, Minister of RMA Reform, stating councils can decide if upgrades of flood protection can be permitted activity if measures meet certain criteria. So we believe the rules are there, but this council is being far too conservative in their approach to these rules. We believe if this council has a common goal, council can transform their operational arm and consent procedures, be united for ratepayers' benefit and perform your necessary duties within the interpretation of the rules. Now, this does not happen at present because the process is not driven by this council. The process has been driven by outside influences and not by the elected members. This elected council needs to set some major objectives and make them happen. We believe our suggestions are a good start. Thank you very much.
Any questions from Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for that presentation. Is it as simple as asking the chief executive or directing the chief executive to plug, no pun intended, and go direct his staff to be more permissive?
I don't know the process. You people employ the chief executive. You don't employ the staff.
Right.
So I presume poor old Chris cops it. So I don't. If you're allowed to go straight to staff, by all means. I don't know the process.
We'd go through chief executive, obviously. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, Trevor, you've talked about two things. One, renewable all existing consented water takes, and then you also talk about particularly utility water takes. So do you have a preference on that?
I'm talking about utilities, which is public assets.
Right.
I'm not talking about, sorry about the confusion, I'm not talking about any private enterprise or whatever. I'm talking about Hamilton City Council taking water for, town supply. I'm talking about Cambridge. I'm talking about Karapiro Dam when their consent comes up in 20 years' time. Why do we have to go through a notified process? Why can't we just, if there's new conditions, fine. But why, once you open that door, there's a whole industry out there that feed off this process. And there's only one person paying for it, and it's the ratepayer. And so what I'm saying is if this council could work towards saying that it can go, it can roll through a non-notified process, still go through a process. Nobody wants to break any laws. Go through a process. We have the case that's all pretty well thought out, public, Mackenzie Country, Meridian Energy last year, 100 million or so gone to stakeholders so they can carry on producing power. I think everybody's been aware of that, Now that's only comes out of our pockets, and it's not necessary. And some could say, well, business could say, no, we're not going to pay that, but they chose to pay that because it was probably cheaper than going through the process. And so it's the process that needs to be more friendly to the ratepayer. And you people, I'm sure, can drive that. How you drive it, I don't know. You have to be united for a start to say, we wish to bring this, make this business more affordable to our ratepayers. That's the first thing you have to say. Then you make a decision. We would like to go down there if we can. And you start. If you have to alter a long-term plan, you have to do something. Well, get on and let's do it.
I know you say that there was a council report on this issue previously.
Yes.
Perhaps
from the driven from the flood protection committees, we were questioning or asking what the process is for permitted activity, and Greg commissioned the staff to send a report, and it was presented here presented to ICM, I'm not sure about here, last September. And it was a very good one, and it gave us hope that under the present rules and regulations, if council were to maybe take a less conservative approach to regulation, a lot of this stuff could be permitted activity. Parts of it are, but we're saying if it's like for like, if a new pump shed has to be, for $13 million, if a new pump shed has to be built 20 metres away, because this one's still got a pump, it's the concept of permitted activity. And we believe the report that came back was there was genuine intent in the system to accommodate that.
Well, we might follow up with
Sorry.
Bruce for a.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Would that be fair comment, Greg?
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the deputation today is in relation to public utility water takes?
Only.
So just municipal type water takes? And the ask is that be considered a permitted activity?
No, we at the moment when the consents come up, they go through a notified process.
Right, okay.
And what we're saying is that if they've been behaving themselves, done everything right, for like Karapiro Dam, been there, 80 years or something, it'd be 100 years time it comes up for renewal. If everything's gone right, why should they have to go through a complete notified process because that's when the costs balloon out. We're saying that it goes through a more simpler process.
Understand.
People still have their say, but
Understand.
it just cuts all that cost out.
All right, there are two more questions, so I'll take those and then we'll close it. I've got Councillor Kneebone and then Councillor.
It was just a quick one. I absolutely get where you're coming from, Trevor, but just looking at the letter that Andy sent out, I mean, that's a significant change to the existing regional plan rules, which means a plan change, which is exactly the same process we've been grinding through the courts with PC1. And under current legislation that we're bound to abide by, we'd have to repeat that same process again. And I guess the point I'm making is I think we need some better comms between your group and this council to understand the ramifications of what you're asking for sometimes, because we just can't do it as quickly and easily as what I think I'm hearing you suggest that we can. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it has to be a combined effort from this council to say, we want to go down this track on behalf of ratepayers. That's all we're saying. And once you start the motion, usually, you get underway. And if it takes a couple of $1 million to change something, well, we're still saving a hell of a lot of where we're going. Well, unless we make a combined start, and I think, the present thing is, it can't. We're saying we can, because it's not I'll be long gone. This is going on forever, and we have to make this, because these things are rolling around day after day, and the cost is we've got to keep the cost to a minimum. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, Mr. Dean.
Okay, I've got Councillor Hughes, and then I will speak Councillor Carson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Really just a point of clarification, Trevor. I totally support where you're coming from on this, and if not back next term, then we're doing what we can to help. Just in relation to the Waitaki scheme, which is the one you're referring to, you were saying this is the burdens carried by ratepayers. In that case, burden is being carried by the users, electricity users of New Zealand. There was $180 million consenting fee passed already and across to various parties on that, which is just extortion, as far as I'm concerned. And New Zealand Inc. is paying for that, the consumers are paying for that, and it's one of the reasons that businesses are being closed around the country because they can't afford the price of electricity anymore. So I totally support what you're saying. Thank you.
Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, mine was exactly the same. I 100% support you, but it's not just ratepayers of the fear. It's cost of living. It's people that pay power bills and everything, and that doesn't mean no ratepayers. So I think that with the wording that it's actually the cost of living of all Waikato residents are affected by this. So thank you, Trevor, for coming in today, and I fully support what you've said. Thank you.
Well, I just think we need change. Same old, it's not working. And you people around this table have the ability to start the change. That's what we're trying to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today, Trevor. Really appreciate you coming in and speaking to this and responding to the questions. I suppose that I just want to pick up on what Councillor Kneebone was saying around communications between the groups. I think that this certainly is something that council could consider. And I think if for us to do that, it's about asking for either a report or some sort of discussion around if this was to be enacted, what would be the policy implications on that? Because we have to consider all of those things, right? But I certainly appreciate you raising the issue for us. Thank
Okay.
you very much, Trevor.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Sorry, microphone.
A question. If a council, this or the next, was to pass a resolution and direct you to work in this direction, how quick? And I know RFA and all that, subject to change. If that was a resolution that was
I can't answer that on the spot. I mean, obviously I've got KPIs that you could set a KPI for me. And there's options under it. There's options on trying to get government to do something that we can't do. You know, they can do it at a stroke of a pen, whereas, you know, we've got to go through quite long processes. We need to look at the options.
Yeah, obviously, Trevor's alluded to, instead of can'ts, how we could look at the cans. That's probably this comes on cans, not cannot.
Yeah, and of course, there'll be a wide view of public who might want to have input on the whole conversation. Which goes back to the whole circular argument about where the issue is in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So what I'm hearing is it is a conversation that a council could have around what does the process look like? What are the implications? Who would need to be engaged in that process? That sort of thing.
The council needs to resolve that it wants to do that, and those are the issues that need to spill out of it. But first and foremost, the council needs to decide whether it wants to go in that direction. That's
all right. Thanks, Trevor. Much appreciated. All right. So apologies. We do have an apology from Councillor Graff. Any other apologies? I've got a mover and Councillor Downard, second and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the, sorry,
Pam,
yes,
if I can just say, I think it's premature to be doing anything. I totally support Councillor Smith saying we've got new legislation coming, and I don't think we should be moving on anything until that legislation is in place. That'll give us better direction.
I do, I suppose from my perspective, I do think that it would be reasonable for this council to ask staff to prepare information for a future council if they wanted to put something in motion or understand the implications of that. Yeah, so that could be something that this council could do. I'd leave that to council. All right, confirmation of the agenda. Got a mover and Councillor Strange. Second and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, disclosures of interest. Any new disclosures of interest from councillors? Nope. All right, we'll go to minutes for confirmation. All right, I'm going to let you talk us through this.
Morning, everyone. We will follow the same process as the previous meeting for confirming and or receiving the minutes we have on the table. I'll run through them one at a time and let you know what it is we are receiving and if there are any resulting actions for council to consider. So first of all, starting with the previous meeting of council on the 24th of June, this is simply confirming that those minutes as in page 11 of your agenda are correct.
I have a mover. Councillor Knaybon? Sorry. Do I have a second? Councillor Nicol? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hodge? All those in favor? Opposed?
Just point of
Sorry?
clarification, we're
Yes.
doing them as a chunk.
No, one at a
No, we're
time.
doing one at a
Yeah,
time.
okay, because I was going to say, sometimes I've done them as a chunk and probably wasn't at every single one, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. June, July.
That will be rubber fingers. They,
Good spotting, though. Eagle eyes.
no, you're quite correct. The minutes that we are confirming are the 23rd of July.
All right, so I've got a mover and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, so now 6.1.
Okay, item 6.1, these are the Rokawa Charitable Trust and Waikato Regional Council co-governance minutes from the 13th of May. We've previously covered these minutes at a workshop and they are now presented for receipt only. We will note the decisions made under delegated authority. There were 2 recommendations for council, which are resolutions number 25-05 and 25-07. We will note those resolutions and any items for council to consider will be tabled by way of report at future meetings. So just to clarify, we are only receiving these minutes and we are not making any further decisions on or contained in those minutes.
Got a Councillor Nicol.
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment, that's all. I just think the process that democracy has developed here is much clearer and more transparent and much easier to follow. So I just wanted to commend that.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to second.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.2.
6.2, these are the Waikato Raupatu River Trust and Regional Council Co-Governance Committee minutes. We are here receiving both the open and public excluded minutes, noting that these minutes have already been made publicly available by way of the previous workshop and this agenda. And we are noting any decisions made under delegated authority. There's no recommendations on the table for council to consider.
I just wanted to comment
Councillor
again.
Dunbar Smith.
Item 7.5 on page 45, pre-meeting discussion summary. So at 1 hour, 7 minutes into the meeting, there was a pre-meeting discussion summary, and I just find that an unusual process that you've got pre-meeting discussions happening, which should really be workshops, then entering a meeting and being made as effectively, well, they're not recommendations.
I can provide a brief comment on this as I wasn't part of this meeting as such. Prior to the meeting, the members gathered and as tends to happen for a lot of committees, the members were having, the pre-meeting chat that they'll have about what's on the agenda for the day. During those discussions, they did identify a few key points that obviously, as Councillor Dunbar Smith has pointed out, those discussions are immaterial. During the meeting, for clarity's sake, they introduced those items so that they would appear in the minutes and that readers would be aware of what was discussed prior. There are no resolutions or actions to consider resulting from that. They're included solely for your information.
Councillor Nicol, do I have a second? Councillor Clarkson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.3. This is on page 91.
Same again, these are the receipt of the minutes, both open and public excluded, which have been released into open previously, of the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust and Waikato Regional Council Co-Governance Committee meeting held on the 6th of June. We are noting the decisions made under delegated authority. They did make a recommendation to council, which is Resolution 25-07, we are only noting that, and any further action again would come to council by way of report or future correspondence.
So could you
Councillor
clarify,
Kneebone, would you like to, sorry?
I just wanted, could you clarify what you mean by that, Dave? There is a recommendation. So if we endorse these minutes, are we endorsing that recommendation?
No,
Noted.
no, you're only receiving the minutes, and essentially the recommendation, which I'm just checking it on to see which recommendation. Okay, just looking, that was the recommendation where the committee resolved that the integrity of the JMA be maintained and its model promoted as an example of effective co-governance, etc., etc. The reason that recommendation isn't tabled here because by legislation and or being a signatory to the JMA, we have already agreed to that.
Councillor Kneebone, would you like to move those? Or Clarkson, would you like to second?
Just before
Oh,
then,
sorry.
though, can you explain what the process will be about changing the location of the meeting in the minute?
Well, that's correct. One thing to note, while you were receiving these minutes, the location in the minutes of where the meeting was held is noted as our chambers. They were held in Rotorua. These minutes, while we are only receiving them, they have been tabled for the next meeting of Tarot, which I think is next week. And at that meeting, when they confirm the minutes is correct, that location will be amended in that process.
Yeah.
I've got a mover and Councillor Kneebone, second and Councillor Clarkson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.4.
6.4, these are the minutes of the Waiora Co-Governance Committee held on the 21st of July 2025. This is page 130 in your agendas. This resolution seeks for you to receive those minutes only and that you will note the decisions made under delegated authority. There were no recommendations to council. However, it is worth noting that at that meeting, they did discuss the tours and that recommendation was tabled at the previous meeting of this council last month and resolved then. So these minutes now contain no recommendations as they've been addressed.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Downard and Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.5.
6.5, these are the minutes of the Integrated Catchment Management Committee, the meeting held on the 5th of August 2025, page 139 of your agenda. And today we are seeking to confirm those minutes as a correct record and to note decisions under delegated authority. There are no recommendations for council to consider in those minutes.
Got a mover and Councillor Clarkson and a second and Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.6, Environmental Performance Committee, 7th of August 2025. We are seeking to confirm both the open and public excluded minutes of this committee as a correct record. This appears in your agenda at page 146 and in the public excluded agenda on page 18.
I have a mover. I've got Councillor Clarkson, second. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question? Oh, second from Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.
I've got a comment on this one.
So last ones, councillors, this is the minutes from the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee meeting held on the 15th of August 2025. Today we are seeking to firstly receive those minutes. Secondly, note the decisions made under delegated authority. And thirdly, note that there is a recommendation for council to consider in these minutes. It has been tabled at this meeting in general items as item 7.3. So this resolution will not enact that recommendation. That will be covered later in the meeting.
Happy to move.
So I've got a mover in Councillor Nicol
just
and
a question.
I'll come to that, and a second in Councillor Strange. Go ahead, ask your question, Councillor Dunbar.
It's item 7.8 of that agenda, page 163. This is the proposed arrangements for the next triennium. Yeah, so this is also a staff recommendation that comes forward that doesn't seem to have been.
Okay. Just to briefly cover this, and I may not be totally in the picture here, the Future Proof Public Transport Committee has been formed by Future Proof. It is not a committee of council. However, council, by way of delegation, provides that subcommittee with its powers to look at the public transport policy that we work on. So the next triennium, there will be two parts to this. And without stepping on the toes of the incoming council, we're seeking for the public transport subcommittee to be formed under RTC, which will make it a subcommittee of council. This recommendation is requesting that Future Proof consider that as this is its subcommittee, and if it agrees, provides the opportunity for Future Proof to disestablish that committee as it holds the power to do so. It doesn't, however, affect the delegations that council has given it. Obviously, if the committee is disbanded, those delegations return to council, and in the next triennium, any new committees formed will be at the will of council, including those delegations.
Oh, so I went and read up what the actual minute says, because it seemed important, and it seems very logical. It's proposed, what they're actually proposing is that the subcommittee be split into a strategic growth matters go to the Future Proof, and all regional public transport matters go to the Transport Committee. So that's a logical thing. That's not actually contained in the staff recommendation item 3. It just talks about being led through a partnership affecting independence. So doesn't seem to follow what's actually happening.
No, there's more work to be done in this scope. There's some more staff work behind the scenes to get that Future Proof, and the partners, of which obviously Regional Council is one to consider.
And the question also is, will Future Proof be meeting prior to the end of the triennium?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so they will presumably make.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they have the option then whether or not to discharge that subcommittee.
Okay.
Councillor Smith?
Just on that issue, if I some time ago, I was on the Regional Public Transport Committee when it was independent of RTC. The problem with that committee was that it was dominated by Hamilton issues, because 80% of the buses in the region are Hamilton centric, and therefore regional non-Hamilton members became very disenfranchised and bored to tears completely and utterly. And so therefore public transport in the regions got lost. Just concerned that, and when it went to RTC, some of us moved to disestablish it because of the Hamilton centric. When it went to RTC, clearly it got put on the back burner at the end of the meetings normally, and they wanted to rush out the door because they'd taken up too much time with normal RTC matters apart from regional transport. So, you need to consider strongly you don't lose that public transport oversight and get it swallowed up in a bunch of other things. So, really do. I wouldn't say that. I was going to say we should bury public transport, but we can't. So anyway, we need to be careful what we do and how we structure public transport. Thank you.
Totally agree. Councillor Strange? Councillor Strange?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I fully take your points on board, Councillor Smith. The recommendation from the committee reflects those concerns. Also, for us moving to a regional rating model, we need to retain that local voice. So RTC is the best place to do that. The plan with moving forward is that RTC would be in the morning, and we'd go from region wide, and as we get towards the end of the day, it would head towards more Hamilton-centric focus. So anyone else not involved can peel away. We respect their time, we respect their travel, consolidating it all onto one day, efficiencies for everyone concerned and costs. So that is the recommendation moving forward.
Okay, thank you for providing that clarity. All right, so I've got a mover and a seconder. Do I, all those in favor? Great. Okay. Now, councillors, we will move on to item 7.1. This is on page 165 of your agendas, and we welcome Vaughn Payne to the table for an update on Waikato Water Done Well. Welcome, Vaughn.
Tēnā koe, e te mana Pamela, o te rā koutou katoa ngā kai kaunihera, me ngā kaimahi o te kaunihera nei. Just thank you, Madam Chair. Greetings to councillors and to staff also. Yes, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to update you on Waikato, what is now Waikato Waters, now that we have legally incorporated the company, and really want to also acknowledge the support of Waikato Regional Council and the journey that we've had, acknowledging that it's been for the country a long journey, but this council was one of the few regional councils that stepped up to acknowledge that there was a regional interest in sorting out a solution for the Waikato and not something that we saw elsewhere in the country. Dave, are you happy to move the slides? Thank you. So some of these slides you've seen previously. So our vision is healthy water, healthy people, te mana o te wai, te mana o te tangata. And our strategic priorities on the next slide. Thanks, Dave. Oh no, I'm getting ahead of myself. So with that vision, it is very much about looking at the needs of our water bodies and looking at the multiple plants that we have and networks that we have within a catchment, and understanding what is the best return on investment for our water bodies, as opposed to being driven by a plant by plant, a consent by consent approach to thinking about that investment. And so by having multiple plants, schemes, networks under the control of one organisation within a catchment, we can start to give effect to that vision of te mana o te wai, te mana o te tangata. Thank you. And our 5 strategic priorities, which you've seen previously, in terms of financial sustainability, obviously scale is important in that regard. The scale of Waikato Waters is about $1.6 billion of assets, and current revenue, once we have the 6 councils in the tent, of about $155 million per year. Workforce currently around 250 amongst the 6 councils. Being customer focused, local influence has been addressed through largely the design of the company, having a shareholder forum that sets the expectations of the company and holds the company to account through that statement of expectations. And obviously another strategic outcome is delivering on expectations, of which there are many, relating to improved water management, and there wouldn't be a treaty settlement in our region that doesn't articulate expectations around improved water management. So those strategic outcomes we set very early on in the journey, and those continue to be the focus, long-term focus of the organisation once it's established. Thank you, Dave. Our shareholders, so 7 of our 10 Waikato territorial authorities, Hauraki, Matamata Piako, Otorohanga, South Waikato, Taupo, Waipa and Waitomo. And I'll talk through shortly around what that might look like in terms of timing of their water businesses moving into Waikato waters, and our iwi partners, Pari Hauraki, Ngati Maniapoto, Ngati Tuwharetoa, Raukawa, Te Arawa and Waikato Tainui, and want to acknowledge the leadership of Councillors Hodge and Mahuta in as recently as supporting the establishment board being appointed. So ngā mihi kia koe, Kataraina. Thank you, Dave. So yesterday we announced the establishment board members. They will be joined by 2 additional members by July next year. So Alina Trout being the chair, an experienced governor, an engineering background, and also holds a number of board roles. You'll know Jadine Kana as an ex-employee of Waikato Regional Council, but also holds a number of roles with our territorial authorities, particularly in the risk and assurance space. And John Lamont, ex-Chief Executive of Watercare, the Entity A Chief Executive, and has the useful skills of being an ex-Air Force pilot. Thank you, Dave. So transfer dates. So we have 6 transfer dates for 6 of our shareholders. So in the current financial year, South Waikato, Waitomo and Waipa move their water businesses into Waikato waters by July 2026. By October 26, Matamata Piako and then Otorohanga and Hauraki by July 27. And Taupo, while they are a shareholder, they haven't agreed to a transfer date, but have agreed to receive shared services. Thank you, Dave. And just a reminder, I suppose, of the why. What were the challenges that our councils were facing or are facing in water services? So the most common challenge relates to affordability, competition for workforce, and delivering on capital works, of which capital works relating to resource consent compliance is a factor in that. And then closely followed by compliance and consenting challenges as well. And so felt that they could best deal with those challenges together as opposed to individually. Thank you, Dave, which is probably a good segue into summarising particularly the critical success factors, but to note that this is the largest grouping of councils in the country who have decided to form a water CCO. And in terms of the success factors, and this is perhaps subjective, but I think there are some lessons here for other likely system changes that might be needed in future. So it is all about leadership and it is all about relationships. If the shareholders or the councils seeking to work together don't get on, they don't see themselves in each other, it's an uphill battle. So leadership and relationships at all levels, at a political level, at an executive level, and throughout the organisations has been really important. When things got tough, often people reverted to saying this is about the long term. This isn't about the next 3 years or the next 10 years. We're trying to find a solution for the next 50 years. And so getting an early agreement on a common vision and strategic priorities was also important in the journey. Also ensuring that we were always conscious of who our bosses were on this journey, and in particular elected members. So ensuring that we maintain that the confidence, not just of the mayors and the chief executives, but the wider elected membership, and that including getting an independent review of the model by, got a mind blank, but I'll come back to his name shortly. Brad Olsen undertook an independent review of the economics of the model. And that was presented back to all elected members at a combined hui. Being principle-based, ensuring that we were aligned, moving as quickly as the slowest council, those sorts of important principles. Importantly, the elected members giving the chief executives a mandate to co-design the model and take that model back to elected members for approval. Having a heads of agreement that was non-binding, that provided a basis for each council to consult their communities on comparing Waikato waters to other options that they consulted on. Being pragmatic, not sweating the small stuff, and probably really important to maintain momentum. It is really easy to think about slowing things down, but we always had some firm deadlines that we were working to maintain momentum. So. And again, just want to finish off by acknowledging this council's support and leadership right from the beginning. When we came together in mid-2023 and asked ourselves the question, do we want to continue to react to proposals out of Wellington, or did we want to come up with a Waikato solution to our water services challenges? So, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa.
Thank you, Vaughn. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation, Vaughan, and well done getting it across the line. Just one question I've got. You said one of the biggest challenges was competition for workforce. I understood one of the reasons for this was it's a consolidation of entities, which means the workforce is going to shrink rather than get bigger and get more competitive. Can you just explain what's happening in workforce out there?
Yeah, so I can't remember the figures, but with it, like a lot of sectors, there's an ageing workforce, and so there is a need for that future pipeline as one of the key workforce challenges that we have. And because of that shrinking workforce, and because everybody wants, you've got various entities being stood up around the country, a lot of councils are struggling under the status quo to attract the right staff. And so they could see that there was going to become an increasing challenge. And rather than competing for staff amongst the 6 or 7 councils, they felt if they had one organisation, then you're not seeing the staff jumping from one council to another, but they're part of one organisation. And I know that there is another water entity, EOY, also being stood up, and a small council would not only face competition from their neighbours, but from that larger water entity being established as well, because a larger organisation is quite attractive to staff in terms of career pathways.
Thanks. It's really the higher school level staff that's the issue. It's not finding the right number of people. Yes, although I do think that even at an operational level, there's the ageing workforce issue exists everywhere. Yeah. Better shut up.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Hey, Vaughan. Thank you. So the establishment board's just been stood up. Will they go ahead and appoint a CEO?
That's under our current plan, yes. So we have an establishment plan that's made up of different work streams, and so in that plan there there is the idea of a CE being recruited pretty quickly. The board haven't yet met, and they may have their own ideas, but that's under the current plan. That's the idea.
In terms of PC1 implementation, this is going to affect all of these councils in a way, and that they're all pretty much locked into Te Whaimana. Do you have any thoughts on how that will impact on the rollout of the services?
I suppose, and I haven't kept up with PC1, but
we can give you a brief.
but my belief is that the approach that we're trying to take in terms of strategic investments to give effect to Te Whaimana, looking at the needs of the river versus a plant by plant thinking, would align with my recollection of where we got to with PC1.
Right.
So prioritisation approach is whether we're talking about land use or point source discharges, I would see strong alignment.
And thirdly, we're obviously in election season at the moment, and our ratepayers are agitated about costs. There seems to be a fear that the water services will actually start to add additional and separate costs to them. Is there going to be separate bills coming through for water under the new model?
Eventually, at this stage, so in terms of the short term, getting to July 2026, our priority is to make sure that we look after customers, look after staff, and do the basics well. In terms of billing, we thought it was too high a risk for Waikato Waters to set up its own billing system with very little benefit to customers. And so we are leaving billing with councils in the short term. So so ratepayers will see what their line item is for Waikato Waters, but they will receive their bill from the local council.
And then finally, is water metering liable to become something prevalent throughout the region?
I would say yes. Each of our councils have budgeted for water meters already in their long-term plans. And so we're committed to delivering on those long-term plan commitments. I would probably just question whether or not there's sufficient budget in those long-term plans for the water meters. I also think there's an opportunity to think differently around, do we need to own the water meters? We think about the way that we look at most technology. It's a licensing approach. It's a software for service approach. And the current approach of owning water meters that quickly become redundant and out of date, I think we've got to change our thinking and make sure that if we're investing in water meters, they're keeping up with technology over time.
You want to?
Yeah, thanks. Look, I just want to acknowledge, Vaughan, the leadership that you've shown in the space, and it's not easy trying to get councils to come together and work, and I think that you had a vision that you've been able to engage them on. I just wonder if you might want to comment on well, first of all, the Minister of Local Government has actually quite often said the Waikato is a success, and what we've got, this is the biggest entity, I think, the country of councils coming together for water services. But maybe you just want to comment on the other CCO, the Hamilton City Waikato District one, and how that kind of works, and especially in a catchment approach.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so EOY being the Hamilton Waikato District CCO, I think there is a vision, I suppose, for one CCO one day for the Waikato region. But our priority is looking after our immediate shareholders and making sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Notwithstanding that, some initial discussions with EOY have identified some opportunities for collaboration. Water meters would probably be one of those. Getting some joint procurement, economies of scale around procurement. Another one would be systems. IT systems and so on. A third one, which I think is probably relevant to Waikato Regional Council, would be perhaps the sub-regional wastewater treatment plant proposed between Waipa and Hamilton. It seems to me that we don't build these plants very often, and it might be a great sitter for looking at one of the Crown mechanisms to set up to design, construct, build and operate that wastewater treatment plant, which would probably mean that it could be built quicker and more efficiently than if it was still left to the water entities trying to work out who's doing what. In terms of catchment-based approaches, Chris, I think there's opportunities there as well to look at, even though we're two different entities, can we collaborate in the consenting space as well and come up with a combined consenting strategy?
Just finally there, do you want to talk about TCDC?
TCDC, TCDC, when TCDC was looking at whether it went with, had multiple options on the table, we were very keen and encouraging of TCDC to join with Waikato Waters. They've decided obviously to look elsewhere, and we respect that. But notwithstanding, I'm sure the shareholders would be open to any approaches by TCDC. They would just need to look at, like we've got a pathway for any shareholder that wants to join. They would put a proposal to the board would undertake due diligence and then put the results of that due diligence to the shareholders. So there's quite a clear process around looking at any new shareholders.
There's a question from me, Vaughn. Hey, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for how you have remained engaged with this council and helping our councillors continue to understand how this process has evolved. So I appreciate that. I suppose I reflect on what started these conversations nationwide, right? It's whether it was the previous government or this government, it's that desire to address the issue of affordability of Three Waters infrastructure and meeting the needs of growing populations or diminishing populations and addressing that affordability of rates. So you've said that this is the largest combination in the country, which of 7 councils. So if we consider, I assume there's about 66 total TAs that have to provide this type of infrastructure, and so 59 others outside of these 7. How many entities are we now looking at across the country? Considering that we wanted to do this because we wanted efficiencies, we wanted access to workforce, we wanted cost savings, things like that. Just
so
how many are we in?
As a rule of thumb, the more you go south, the less entities or aggregation of entities that you get, as a rule of thumb. So most of the aggregations happening in the North Island, if you like.
I thought I'd heard something like 42 entities or something.
That sounds about right. I read an article a couple of weeks ago along those lines. I think
instead of 66 councils,
I think from
42 entities.
I think the government's perhaps isn't that impressed with the number of standalone councils, is my reading of the situation. And to support what Chris said, the Waikato, it's got probably one of the most one of the highest number of TAs, but only ending up with largely two entities. I think they're pretty pleased with the leadership from the Waikato.
Very good. Nice. Good to hear that recognized. Councillor Smith.
With the 7 councillors, what's the population base in those 7? Because several of them are pretty small.
Yeah. So the population, and this isn't connected population, but it's just total population, I think was about 250,000. Yeah, sorry, 205,000. In terms of number of customers, it's about 65,000 customers.
Thank you.
And in terms of water meters, my recollection is about a third of those customers have water meters. So we've got quite a challenge in the water meter space.
Yeah, I come from Waikato district where we had done all the water meters, and the savings from leaks and whatever was enormous. And by sorting out that issue, you don't then have to build new plant for some time. So I'm watching from the sideline as to see how Hamilton moves forward because they've resisted those meters so long. Yeah, congratulations on where you've got to, and be intriguing where you end up. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
I was to comment, we get something strategy and policy the other day to say that with the water services bill, councils, regional councils don't get to have a say generally about what the rules are, except for here. You know, it's the only area where the treaty settlement is being applied to vary, possibly increase the standards. Do you have any comment?
Only that, I suppose the settlements we've known about for some time and have been trying to give effect to those for some time. I think that the real opportunity is thinking about a whole of catchment approach to investment. And I don't just mean point source, I mean land use as well. I think we can get some can be smarter and help our dollar go further just by thinking about investing collectively and as opposed to our, I suppose, district by district, plant by plant approach that we've been. Yeah, so I don't feel challenged by our increased expectations around improving water quality, because I think there are big opportunities to invest smarter and make some good savings.
And we just had a delegation earlier asking whether we would consider water utility takes that are already consented should be able to be rolled over on a non-notified basis if they comply and don't have any issues. Is that something you'd ever comment on?
From a water company point of view, that sounds attractive. I think though, yeah, I think it's got to look at every situation on its merits.
Well, we'll put you in touch with Trevor Simpson from Waikato. So.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no other questions for Mr. Payne, can I get a mover to accept the report? I've got Councillor Hodge and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Vaughn. Thank you for your work. All right, councillors, we'll now go to item 7.2. This is our health and safety report for July 2025. This is on page 167 of your agendas. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, councillors. I'll take you through the report to the points of interest and take any questions that you might have. You'll see there that we've had a forestry worker pretty seriously injured with the amputation of 4 fingers, which actually ended his career. I think we discussed at the last council meeting just the compensation, and you'll see that he received $60,000 there, which doesn't seem like a lot when you've lost your career. But I think it was the end of his 45-year career, and he was 65, so due for retirement. And he would have also received an ACC payment for that. If he had have been decided to continue working, he would have obviously been covered further with ACC. You'll see in point 16 there, just around our SOPs. It's a really important thing for us, and the health and safety team work closely with the managers to ensure that we've got SOPs in place, that we keep our workers safe in whatever they're doing. And that's really the area that this organisation fell down on. So it's good that we're across that. Progressing on, you'll see that we've mentioned the My Everyday Wellbeing again. We've talked about that a few times. That continues to be a real valuable thing for us and the staff. My Everyday Wellbeing continues to evolve and progress and basically offer a more comprehensive offering. And Marie has, socialised that with other organisations, and thankfully we've managed to get a couple of other councils on board with that. That's had a significant positive impact for us. Our annual fee for that is $14,000, and that's been reduced by half to $7,000 by bringing those other organisations on board. And it's just worth noting, talking about that constant innovation and improvement, My Everyday Wellbeing are now, they now have a new mood meter offering, which allows staff to go in and sort of tailor how they're feeling at the time, and that will give different outputs for recommendations on things that they could do. So the wellbeing team have picked that up and are looking at it for us, and will continue to socialise that with staff. As we move through into the events, you'll see that there are 3 personal safety events there. That was all for the one incident, and that happened in Thames with the maritime team. They turned up on site, and unfortunately, a gentleman was very agitated to see them and got off his boat with a metal bar and proceeded towards them in an aggressive manner. Now, the maritime team are fantastic and did a great job in responding to that and de-escalating that situation, and worked as a team to calm the man down and able to have some reasonable dialogue with him. He did attempt to assault them kind of through that, and again, they managed to de-escalate that. So it's a real credit to them. And the training that they have received has gone well, along with the previous experience that they bring to the role. It's also worth noting that Hayden's done a fantastic job with the investigation for that, and we'll have had really good engagement with the police around that as well. So it's good that that's been progressing well. The other piece that I wanted to pick up, you'll see there that we have the criminal antisocial behaviour. We've got one instance of that, and I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Downer. We had talked about that, and because we've had a couple of police interactions that misinterpreted that, but that was actually for something separate, which was a member of staff observed family violence assault and actually stopped in their work and contacted the police to be able to assist with that. That's just to clarify that. As we progress through, I've talked a little bit about the good response Maritime had with that instance, but we are seeing improved quality in our investigations, and the health and safety team are working with managers and staff to ensure that we kind of have more quality outputs and the corrective actions are good, and that we kind of share those across the organisation. So that's going very well. Sure, that was the key points that I wanted to raise with you today. Thank you.
Nice. Are there any questions? We've got a mover in Councillor Downard and a second in Councillor Smith. Just before I put that, just want to comment on that cost reduction through shared service provision.
Yes.
I suppose, in that My Everyday Wellbeing. I think that's a real testament to how, when we work collectively as councils, whether that is here within the region, whether that is across regional sector, whether that's across the country, and engagement with other councils, it shows how we can achieve cost savings for our ratepayers while continuing to meet the obligations that we have, not just legally, but morally to our staff and those who interact with us. So I think it's fantastic feedback to see, because that provides evidence to our ratepayers that we continue to look for opportunities. So
Agree.
well done. All right, I've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed?
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. All right, councillors, I'm just going to take a 5-minute break before we go on to the next item. All right, so meeting adjourned at 10:46. We'll come back and 10:55. We'll come back 10:55. We are now on item 7.3. This is the public transport bus renewal or bus contract renewal. Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, councillors. I'll open with some statements, and then my team who have undertaken the technical work are here to answer any questions. So over the last several years, Council and several external committees, as well as others, have been directly involved in the development of the package in front of you today. Just summarise that for your benefit. So in effect, we are delivering aspects or a step forward in terms of the aspirations, the vision and the objectives of the 2022 Regional Public Transport Plan, which was adopted in September 2022, and then picked up through the long-term plan process from August, September 2023, and included in the workshops with you all in November and December 23, and is included in the report that was presented to you in January 24 ahead of the preparation of the consultation document. Several of the projects within the package here were included within the Regional Land Transport Plan, which was adopted in mid-2024. But then we did provide updates to the Future Proof PT Subcommittee in February 24, the Regional Transport Committee in April 24. The PT Pathways report was presented to the PT Subcommittee in November 24. There was a council workshop on zero emission buses in November 24. The Future Proof Implementation Committee received a report on the North Waikato area in December 2024. There was a workshop of the PT Subcommittee looking at bus networks, all of the networks that you'll talk about today, at a workshop on the 5th of May 2025. There was a report to the Future Proof PT Subcommittee in May 24 and to Regional Transport Committee in May 25 and the RTC in May 25. Council had a workshop looking at zero emission buses and assets in June 25. There was a series of network and service workshops with Hamilton City Council and Waikato District Council in May 25. A report to Regional Transport Committee in June 25. We undertook public consultation in June and July 25 with 1,218 responses. And then at the recent Future Proof PT Subcommittee in August 25, we provided an update on what was coming to you today. So the minutes and the discussions of all of those are available. What we're presenting to you today is an integrated report that pulls together all of the channels of technical work and community engagement that's been underway into a single report with a single set of recommendations that frame up where we're at now and what we need to do next. So Dave, could I ask you to bring up the first of the timeline slides? So this is where we're at today, and the second red box in the centre timeline is what we are presenting to you today. And you can see the component parts of the journey that we have been on. The second slide, I won't ask you to switch to it quite yet, but talks about what we need to do from today's decision. The report in front of you states that deferring a decision on this topic would have significant impacts. It's taken work since late 2022 and all of the way through this triennium to get to the place where this report is in front of you. If a decision isn't made in this triennium about this step of the process, it will take a significant amount of time for the next triennium to pick this topic back up, and that will have significant impacts on the timeline that we are working to as a result of 6 months of negotiation with NZTA to extend bus contracts to October 27 and mid-2028 for the commencement of new contracts. In addition, not being able to commence those new contracts in 27 and 28, as stated in the report, jeopardises the region's ability to maintain service continuity and quality and potentially impacting public confidence and operational performance. I should also note that achievement of a CEO KPI is at risk unless a decision is made this triennium, and that maps out the things that are required by June 2026. So we can get into some detail in a moment, but what's in front of you today in summary is a publicly consulted and supported network change that can achieve significant progress with delivery of the vision in the Regional Public Transport Plan and wider aspirations. Critically, we believe with a day one launch within the existing budget, subject to tender. The report, in summary, having undertaken comprehensive technical work and aligned with the feedback from yourselves in terms of previous workshops, does not recommend that we require the full bus fleet to be electric on day one of those new contracts, but rather allows the market to make steps to deliver the government mandate over the period of time within that 9-year contract term, which is the standard term that we operate for public contracts. We are in the middle of a 9-year or towards the end of a 9-year term at present.
Sorry, can you just say that one more time? I just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
So we are indicating as a result of the work that the most efficient way to transition to zero emission vehicles is to allow the operator to make that transition at time they would control at lowest cost to us, so that they achieve the government mandates by the dates that are set in the National Emissions Reduction Plan. And that would be at some point through the 9 or so year term of the new contract.
I think it's a really important point you're just making. I just want to make sure all councillors understand the impact of it. So you're not proposing any significant rating impact through this at the start, but it might change over time.
The contract that we are proposing, and we can talk about that in more detail, includes the potential for a number of step points that could be achieved either through available budget or population change or government policy direction that would allow us to do more as budget decisions permit, but we're not asking for that on day one.
Oh, sorry, can I get Jen and Angela? I've got a question order. Yep.
Are you going to cover that in more detail?
We-
I can wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I can just get to the end of the opening statement, then we'll go through the pieces of this. If
Can I
that's
get you
okay.
to just pull that mic just a little bit closer? There you go. Thank you.
Then in terms of having assessed the options for depots and charging facilities and the things that we talked about at our last workshop with yourselves in June, our technical work now recommends that we do not take the step change ourselves to invest in depots on day one. And we have undertaken some external financial modelling of the costs of the outcomes of that technical work that talk about the difference in terms of an interest cost of us investing versus the change to an operational cost of the operator investing, and that's included in your report. However, the report recommends that as a minimum, we continue to consider options that reduce future risk for the organisation and for the region. And that could be via negotiation of an asset transfer clause at the end of the next batch of contracts, or further technical work, which we would look to deliver through the next long-term plan that would think about what the options are as a result of the contracts that will be in place at that point. But we're not asking for that decision to be made today. So if, Dave, we go to the next slide. From this point, we work through the remainder of 2025 to pull together the actions that arise from your decisions today and seek approval from NZTA of our approach by the end of the year or by January 2026. And alongside that, continue to work on procurement documents and undertake early market engagement. Our plan is to approach the market in early 2026 or January, February, and then start to engage directly with the market. And that will give us a sense of
the tendered price for the services that are within the work that's in front of you today. That will come back through council several times, and in addition, has to come back to council for a decision ahead of that contract being approved and the NZTA funding being approved. So that is the point that you make a funding decision. And as I say, as a result of the technical work, the proposals are within budget on day one. From that point, we're into establishment, and then there is then a period of time through 2026 and 2027 for the regional contracts to be established, and then an additional amount of time for the Hamilton contracts to be established that then go live. So November 27 and July 28. So this is a process that began in 2021, 2022, and will conclude with the final contract going live in mid-2028. And that's a sign of the points that we're on that journey as we go through. So my proposal, Madam Chair, is that we go through each of those component parts and allow council to ask questions on each, and the experts here will respond. And then I guess I'll look to you to work out how you want to pull this together and move to the decisions.
Happy with that approach?
So maybe the first one then on the next slide is the networks that are proposed. And I don't have slides for all of these, but I just thought it was valuable to show you the networks that are proposed here. And then Catherine can answer any questions on those and on the consultation that's been undertaken.
And remind us, these network proposals, you've taken these through what processes of engagement and with whom?
Good morning, councillors, and through the chair. So we developed short, medium and long-term public transport networks for all areas in which we are needing to go out to tender for. Hamilton just had a short-term and long-term, everywhere else had short, medium and long. We went out for consultation in June, the 25th of June, I believe, until the 13th of July, via our normal consultation process managed through our council communications team. So this was an online only survey which detailed the proposed plans, included maps. We did provide hard copies of the surveys if they were requested, which we had a few instances of that, which worked quite well. So it was open to the entire region, and yes, collated information through that.
Perhaps should add that there were also engagements with district councils ahead of that process, and we got to the point of letters of support from many of the councils as well. So what was proposed had already included a lot of their feedback.
Just a question on that.
Yes, go ahead.
When you went out and consulted with people about what they would like, did you ask them how much they're willing to pay for it?
So for the short-term options for every network that we are putting together, it is within existing budgets. So it does not require any increase in cost, subject to tender, of course. So we really tried to be careful with what we were proposing to do in the short term for 2027 and 2028. It's really an optimization and an efficiency exercise with what more can we do with the same budgets. The medium term and long term service enhancements and improvements are based on additional funding, which will be determined over the next 9 years. So we'll only be able to do if funding is received from Waikato.
So the electrification wouldn't occur till 2028 and beyond. Is that what you're saying? It's the medium term, not the short term.
Well, yeah, so I just do want to make a differentiation here a little bit, is that the bus networks on the ground are the networks in terms of whether they run by diesel vehicles or electric vehicles, or when the EV vehicles come in, doesn't change what the bus network will be on the ground, will not affect what we're able to deliver in the short, medium and long term. I think the electrification is just how the fleet progresses over time towards an electrification component.
But there are costs for electrification which will be borne by someone and presumably will impact on fares.
Yeah. We'll get to the vehicles in a moment, if that's okay, Ben.
Okay.
Councillor Cookson, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Strange. So this is, let's keep our questions in relation to the networks at this point, because we are going to step through the various aspects. Councillor Cookson.
Chris.
No, you're good.
Yeah, thank you. No. Spoke to Mayor Toby this morning and he's totally supportive of the hierarchy model you've got here. His big issue was that he doesn't want electric buses. He definitely wants diesel buses to be running that service. That was what came out of that discussion this morning. Matamata Piako, I've got some issues with that because, as what I understand is, Matamata want to have a service with Cambridge. They don't want to have a circular route like you've got there because it would take Matamata people considerable amount of time to get back Matamata if the service is leaving from Cambridge back to Hamilton. So I don't know what that's going to provide. It's actually going to provide a service that no one wants because the service they want in Matamata only want to be serviced to Cambridge, not to Hamilton or anyone else. So I'm really struggling with why that model's like that in the long-term model. And if you go back to Matamata Piako, is the I've already got complaints all the time in my area that we've got frequency of buses with no people. But in the long term there, you just about want to double the services going to Morrinsville and that, which we've already got complaints there's not enough people running on the buses. So I've got real issues with that as well, that in the future you're wanting to provide and Morrinsville hasn't hit 10,000 people yet, it's still sitting around 7. You're taking if Hauraki go on its own, then it's limiting the service that that Hauraki people aren't coming through to Morrinsville and then connecting to Hamilton. So yeah, I've just got real issues with all that, thanks you. And actually wanting to provide extra services out of Te Ara going further out as well. Struggling with that because it needs to be in a place in Te Ara that people can just catch a bus, and if they want to drive their car to that point, why would you want to drive a car and leave it out by the golf course or somewhere in Te Ara to catch a bus to Hamilton? So I can't say that's quite ridiculous as far as I can see as well. So I don't know if that's enough points, but thank you.
Would you like to respond at all in terms of what engagement led to these sorts of proposals?
Sure, through the chair. So with Matamata Piako district, the connection to Cambridge, between Matamata and Cambridge via Hamilton, that has been there's been a lot of interest for that service, both from elected members and the public. So we did want to engage and test responses on that from the public. There was quite a bit of interest in keeping that in there. It is part of the long-term plan just because it does require quite a bit of extra additional cost in order to reroute the service via Cambridge, but that is something that we do see would be quite important, I think, to the community and to Cambridge as well.
Yeah, but it's a service that what they want from Matamata to Cambridge and back to Matamata. It's not a service they want going around the loop. That's what I was trying to explain then. That will not be a service that will be used if it is connected to the rest of the network.
I acknowledge that. But I do also just want to note that for any medium-term and long-term network plan that we have, particularly if for a new service or a new area, we will need to do detailed consultation with the communities at that time. We don't want to do too much detailed consultation on future plans at this point when there's so much uncertainty, and it could be 6 to 9 years before we have fundings to even do it. So that is something that will be ironed out in more details and tested with the communities and elected members at the time, should funding be available in order for us to even do that.
Short-term, long-term planning, it should actually have a dates of when that's thinking it's going to happen as well.
we will, with all the networks, for all the service enhancements, as we do every NLTP period, we apply for funding to do service enhancements. Every NLTP.
This is back to your business plan. You should have some dates when these.
Mics, please. All right, so just so I'm clear, because you do have a date with the short term. The short term assumption on all of these networks is that it's within the financial envelope that we already have.
Correct.
The medium and long term are based on engagement you've had with the public, district councils, et cetera, and are reflective of what you feel you've heard. But the funding associated with those medium and long-term plans would come back to a future council for endorsement at a future time. Have I got that right?
So yes, that is correct. There are 3 funders for public transport. One is the council, another is the customer, and the third is the NZTA. Any change that requires additional funding, either from this council or NZTA, to come back through a process like the long-term plan, and that's where we would, subject to the government policy statement of the day, would be able to apply for further funding from the Crown to support any change that gets made here. The point just on fares, and there's been a question around private share through the process. The day one timetable, with no extra cost, has no impact on private share. And aspirationally, we would want to see a lot more passengers as a result of the network changes that we make. That would reduce the private, that would increase the private share contribution to total cost without any further changes to fare numbers themselves. There's a reference to that in the report. But yes, so day one is what we're focused on based on what's achievable within the existing envelopes, multiple, and then growth over that time has now been technically assessed and publicly consulted and would be delivered as funding becomes available.
And as approval is sought and received from both NZTA as well as this council or future WRC councils.
Correct.
Right? Okay. I've got Councillor Hughes, Councillor Strange, and then Councillor Smith. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but I want confirmation, please, that the budget figures that have been consulted on include all the new standards set by the government for fare recovery, and that the actual fare resulting from that is what we've consulted the constituents on.
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Strange.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the team for all the work that you have done over the many, many years to get us to this point. So thank you for that. Madam Chair, I'd like to move this motion just to get it on the table. Question for the team. Fundamentally, we need PT that is frequent, reliable, and that people will use. We also need it to be boundaryless as well. So moving to a regional PT rate enables a lot of that boundaryless planning to occur. And we need that local voice as well. So I'm confident that we have consulted, as Phil has outlined, over the years with the community, with committees, with our TA partners as well as having council workshops as needed. It gives me confidence as well that this has also gone through regional transport committee processes as well for the wider region. Just focusing on Hamilton for a moment with the network reviews, based on feedback, it's around 60% were happy to walk a little bit further to get to a more frequent route. Alongside that, I also had conversations with members in our community about size of buses, the ability to take bikes on Hamilton buses, and other mobility devices. At what point of the process will the future council or committees be able to feed into bus sizes, bus makeup, bikes on buses within Hamilton as well?
So yeah, I guess it's, sorry, Chair. As part of the tendering, yes, we will be looking at bus vehicle requirement, and usually that's informed by the national standards. So there's actually the national requirement for urban buses standards, and I guess the provision of bike racks is also part of the RUB. So that will be issued in the document as the requirement. But so at this stage, I think the staff will not be seeking any feedback on the RUB standards. But yeah, I'm happy to take in the councillors any additional requirements that we need to include in our applications.
Yeah, I guess feedback from the community that I've heard is having more space, maybe less seats for mobility devices actually on the buses, especially in Hamilton. You don't want to be stopping for too long, getting bikes off bike racks. You want that roll on, roll off if possible. But yeah, happy to take that up at the appropriate time.
Happy to answer further questions on networks, and then the next slide is just a summary of each of the other topics, if there are questions on those as well. In your hands, Madam Chair.
Sorry. I'm just going to test the room. What do we want to do here? Do we want to work through each of these sequentially and ask the questions along the way, or do you want to hear all the presentations?
We have an indication how long all the presentations is it 50 slides, or is it?
There is one slide with the titles of the other channels of work on there. There is no further information in the PowerPoint. So it was really about going through questions that you had on each of the other work streams, really. So
happy to wait my questions till the end.
Okay. Just before we move off of the network, so we'll go through that, but I just want to check, are there any other questions regarding the networks that have been discussed?
Probably. Yes.
Probably.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Councillor Smith and then
thank you.
Councillor Marr.
Report in its totality has probably left me with more questions than answers. I tried to establish some of the costing issues that I have with Janine, and she tells me this wonderful group to my left is going to answer them all. So I'm prepared to wait for that. But one of the problems I've got is that I suppose I'm looking at public transport a bit like benefits. You've got to provide some members of our community with a standard of living through an unemployment benefit or a sickness benefit, so that they have the ability to meet their basic needs. And I put public transport and basic needs for our community for those who are not able to, it's impractical for them to have private transport. So looking at it in that way, I haven't seen the detail about the shape of the buses, and maybe it's detail that it's not yet ready to be looked at. And so I'll make that statement at this stage and wait till the end to come back to what hopefully we will hear. But I'm just, yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I think I'll wait till the end.
Again, was there a question about the network? Yeah. Microphone.
It's the makeup of the buses. You know, like seeing all these big 48-seater buses running around town at the peak periods is great. They're all full. The rest of the day, they're basically empty.
So
it's
the network
that's
question?
the network. You know, how are we going to service the network in a practical way? So the routes, not an
Okay,
issue.
that's what, the routes is what
Yeah, but it's
I
how
was.
the routes are serviced that I'm concerned
Okay.
about at the moment. One of the issues.
Got it.
So will that
Councillor
be
Marr.
covered shortly, or?
Well, like I say, I wanted to get the networks, and how I interpreted networks was the routes that are being proposed in here.
What I asked the question is, are you going to cover the type of buses, vehicles that will be used on that network?
As I've said, there is one other slide on this presentation pack that lists the work stream headings. We will answer any questions you have on each of those work stream headings.
Right. Network questions.
Network
route
questions.
Sorry.
Got it.
Route questions.
Right. Yeah, no, I just a little bit to Robbie's concern around the input on the routes, which I sort of raised. I had a Great Barrier group say to me, we weren't consulted, so there's probably some criticism around the district council in that, because to me that would be part of their network actually requesting what they would do. But can I just get clarity? So, you know, the affordability of the bus service, there's apparently cost estimates there that we haven't seen any of, and it's not in this pack. But the high level and that depot land and staff vehicle facility, does that relate to the short term, the medium, or the long term? Those figures you've got there, 24 million for depot land. Now, is that the short term piece, or is that the medium term piece, or is that the long term piece that you've got here? What does 24 million relate to?
So that's not a network question.
Well, it is, but well, okay. Yeah. If you're going to cover it later on.
No, it's routes. So sorry. Yep. Valid questions. But I just want to, again,
well, we've got
this is about the lines on the map right now. So do you have some comments about, along the lines of Councillor Cookson, around the routes, both short, medium, and long term for your area?
I think.
Did you want to touch
I'll
on that,
leave
Catherine, in terms of
to later.
environmental?
Okay. Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Okay, so in terms of Hamilton, the orbiter, for example, it says here the service is not well optimized and efficient. So, but you're not proposing to change that at this moment. Long term is going to go, but if the service is not well optimized or efficient, why have we not changed it so it is more optimized?
So through the chair, I can provide comment on that. The removal of the orbiter relies on a supporting network that can adequately replace what the orbiter does. Currently, yes, there are inefficiencies in how the orbiter operates. It seems counterintuitive sometimes, but the circular services, because they just go round and round, the reliability and on time, punctuality, I guess, is not that great. To remove the orbiter now in the short term would require quite a step change in the rest of the network, which we wouldn't be able to do on a cost neutral basis, which is why that's kind of earmarked as the long term, so we can get the groundwork for the network, Hamilton network, as best as we can, and then have a significant uplift in service when the orbiter is replaced.
Fine,
Yes.
and it speaks here about on-demand services.
Yes.
Now, are they currently funded under the NZTA model?
So-
On-demand services?
No, so on-demand services are not currently funded because we do not have on-demand operating at the moment other than the night flex.
So there's a suggestion in here about a consultation about on-demand services, saying people are open to using these services. Are we proposing to shift to on-demand? Because that's what I hear. People see the big buses going around not full, and that on-demand might be a better option. Is that proposed in this model?
So there is on-demand proposed to support the network, not necessarily to replace it holistically, but as we shift from a coverage network to a more direct, high-frequent network, it does require the supplement of on-demand in certain areas. So the scope for on-demand within Hamilton is being worked through. Now that we have the bus network, the fixed route bus services agreed in a draft format, we can now engage with to do work on determining the cost of on-demand, where will be the areas that really need it if they've lost coverage in particular. So it will be a core component of the 2028 network, yes. But how that looks and what the cost of that is not yet determined.
And whether NZTA will pay for it, we'd have to go back to them cap in hand and ask them for more money for on demand. Is that right?
If we wanted it to be part of our contracted bus services network, then yes. But I would note that they have recently approved the funding for the Timaru My Way on-demand system, which was the first time that they had funded an on-demand system. So that's starting to change, and our ability to access funding is getting, I think, easier in that space than it has been over the last few years.
But I don't see that, because what I hear from public is too many big buses going around empty. We want something that's smaller and more the type of thing Robbie was talking about. But would we need to drop off main services in order to pick up on demand?
So what is proposed through all the consultation and for years and years is that we move from a coverage, so your big buses going around every neighbourhood in Hamilton,
yep,
to people walking, if they're able, a longer distance to reach a more fast, frequent and reliable bus service.
Right.
And in its place, it's that first and last mile that I talked about people getting to that fast and frequent service. For those who are not able, perhaps there is a hierarchy of needs for that on-demand, for the more aged or disability users to use the on-demand to reach the more fast and frequent.
But just to clarify that is not in the current model, nor is the funding for that in the current model.
No, there's no current funding because the current government chose not to prioritise any PT funding. So the GPS affects the funding, which affects what we can do. So it's all dependent on the GPS, which sets the funding.
And my question was, if you drop off a large bus service, are you then able to apply it to an on-demand service if there is spare funding in that model?
Yes, but there wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee of subsidy on that at this point.
Although Timaru provides an option.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So perhaps we could switch to the next slide, which is as simple as it gets. But maybe in opening, could we get some comments from the team around the questions that you've heard around peak vehicle requirement, smaller buses, and maybe some commentary on the zero emission piece as well before we take further questions.
Just before you go on to the next one, the routes or routes, as I would say, whatever. I'm concerned about the increased frequency model, and therefore Hamilton has not provided for T2 on the likes or bus lanes. So you're going to increase the frequency of the routes, of the services on those routes. What work have you done with the likes of Hamilton City to ensure that buses can move freely and maintain their timetable? Because if you increase the frequency, you're adding to the congestion, and you're not getting rid of the congestion necessarily as a percentage. So I'd like to understand how those routes will cope with the additional buses, and what work you've done with Hamilton City in particular, ensure that those buses can move more quickly. And are they going to remove those stupid bus stops that stop the buses and therefore the traffic? So anyway, there's a bit there. Thank you.
So we work really closely with Hamilton City Council every day, and in the vein of probably what has been the majority of the conversation through the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee for the last 3 years, that alignment of long-term plan funding is the most discussed topic in that agenda. In addition, yes, it has, and the Hamilton City Councillors have now got a very clear idea about what our requirements are to ensure that we can run a reliable bus network for the city.
Get rid of, that's just a joke, really.
20-ton digger, get rid of them pretty quick.
Sorry.
No, just to what thank you, Madam Chair. Just extra to what Councillor Smith was saying there. I've got real serious issues with the alignment of buses in Hamilton, and then not even talking to the education department, and there's buses of theirs that are travelling on the roads at 8:45, blocking and congesting traffic and blocking buses and everything else, when those buses could have parked up for 10 minutes and actually would have saved on congestion of actually what's going on in Hamilton. And you've actually got buses at the same time that are out of service that are travelling around the city in congestion times as well. And just the management of all that has got a real issue in the future. If you're talking about population growth and everyone out, that must be something that you've got, your Department of Public Transport needs to have a bit more oversight of what you're actually causing in congestion times around the city. So 100% what Noel was speaking about then. You may not notice it, but every time I travel into the city every morning trying to get to a 9 o'clock meeting, that is the issue that I meet.
So if I understand the question, it's how are we engaging with Ministry of Ed and their buses? Is that your question?
But it's actually the congestion of all buses it's our buses that are not in service. It's it's school buses as well that are all on the road at the same time. Yet those buses that are coming from the eastern side of the city trying to come west, and they've got no pupils on, yet they're blocking traffic, as well as our empty buses that are not in circulation at that time of travelling somewhere empty. Yet wouldn't those buses either travel before peak traffic time or after peak traffic time to get somewhere, and not during peak traffic if they're not doing anything?
If I could just try and grab this and what being asked, are you asking for in the contract negotiations going forward with whoever gets it, that they don't run out of service buses in peak periods? Obviously the Ministry of Education is something that's outside of our discussion right now. I'm just trying to, I understand the sentiment, and obviously there's a chicken and egg. If you've got more people wanting to go on a bus because it's more frequent or it suits their need.
These are buses not in service.
There'll be, I'm just saying, but there'll be less buses, there'll be less congestion of other vehicles. That's the whole point of PT. But are you asking staff to say, consider under contract negotiate tender processes about the movement of out of service buses during peak times?
Yep, and that same discussion should happen with the Education Department.
So staff can take that.
Separate to the contracts about relieving the congestion of bus services too frequent.
So
just through the chair, just in response to that, so Waikato Regional Council and Hamilton City Council have been working really closely on planning and the provision of infrastructure in transport corridors across the city. So that's an active piece of work that we've got at the moment. So we're in this triennium, in the current 3-year period, we're into a very heavy period in doing that work. So it is about making sure that we've got the infrastructure that's in place that does support public transport, but also supports other modes of transport and supports the operation of the city in a general sense. So that work is going on. One thing that we were challenged at the most recent public transport subcommittee was to actually show more of the benefits of that work, and that's something we've taken on board and we're working actively on at the moment. So we are working closely with Hamilton City. There is a considered program of work in that space, but there's more to do, obviously. Yeah.
Councillor Strange.
Oh yeah, just incredibly quickly, just to add to Councillor Smith's points. Probably, yeah, a lot of our discussion is about aligning those infrastructure and services, and some of the low-hanging fruit, rather than moving straight to T2 lanes, which are costly and annoy people, is just stepping people towards more bus-friendly, going first at lights, so having transponders. And there are several intersections around the city where that already takes place. Yeah, the very minimal bus lanes that we do have, actually making sure that they work as well.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks. It strikes me that the conversation's gone tangents, which aren't specifically on here, and it just highlights for me again while we've talked about previously about structure of RTC and the PT sub. You really need to get it right that the TA connections and that voice on network does get set up at the same time next triennium, that it isn't just coming through constituent councillors and generic surveys, but very targeted relationship where we keep the mayors and the council TAs close with us. But my question just jumps to the very last part of that motion. I asked in the break, but I'll say it now. That delegating authority of the CE to approve map, why is that? Why would we do that and not approve ourselves? Yeah, no, I already know the answer. I just
Madam Chair, it's because it's not finished yet. Yeah. We're waiting for you to make a day about the direct wish to take in relation to the transition to CP. Because of the election, you won't be available to approve it. Finished. Right. It's been written.
So the guidance you're getting today from the decisions is feeding into that. Yes. And there'll be nothing else new.
No,
that.
no. It will reflect the direction you point us in today. And of course, it's not a statutory document, so it can be updated at any time if your direction changes in the future.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to zero emission buses. Are we at that stage yet?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think that councillors have been well enough brought up to date with this transition and the proposals we met today. We've had the workshop on the 17th of June. Now, today, we're suggesting that if council was to do the electrification itself, depot land would be 24 million, staff and vehicle facilities 50, a total of 74 million in full year 28, which is a 77% increase over LTP. In the workshop, it actually says zero emission buses, the total capex is 282 million between 2025 and 2038. So we've got a significant difference in the costings that have been presented to us to date, and I'd like some clarification of that.
Julie or James?
Through the very high cost, the total capex is over 30 years. My understanding, and they were the initial modelled amounts. So the ones that are in this report relate specifically to the depot land as the buses and everything else as well.
Sorry, what it says here is total capex 2025 to 38 is 282 million. Total capex over 30 years is 330 million. That was the first time in June that I heard that there was a huge amount of costing coming down the line. And suddenly we're saying here today, this must be made a decision today where we're advocating the electrification of the bus fleet. And we're suggesting that, okay, council may not choose to spend the $74 million. Let's go to the private operators. They're going to have to pay the same sort of money to electrify and staff and facilitate. So someone is going to be paying this. And I don't think there's enough implications here showing the costs of rates. In the past, Hamilton City Council has looked after many of these functions. Now, with this process, because of electrification, the depot and the land falls to us in our rating process. So these will fall on our rating costs. Our rates will go up to pay for these contracts.
That's only if we decide on the medium and the long term at that time. Is that correct? Well, if it gets entered into.
So there's a reference in the report that those costs equal an interest payment that has been calculated through the financial model as an annual cost on council, I think of 4 million a year. The next paragraph of the report indicates what our assessment of the cost would be if the operator were to provide those things, and says that it's, I think, up to 500,000 a year. So
Can you point us to where in the report?
Item 64. Now, I don't understand what you've said there, so perhaps you can explain each of those in detail, because we're being asked to make decisions today that have got fundamental implications for rates.
Again,
without adequate information.
Public transport is a third funded, or a portion funded by rates, a portion funded by NZTA, and a portion funded by fares. So not all of that is rates. In the service, operational service model, if council were to buy the land, then that would all be on the organisation, yes.
But presumably the private operator would have to buy the land for the electrification and put in the electrification process as well. Someone has to provide the facilities for electrification of buses and then purchase the electric buses themselves.
And they effectively do that today.
Well, they do it with diesel, don't they?
Yes, they do. But the vehicle is theirs. They own the land and they invest in the land for the depot and facilities that they have to operate the network.
That's right. But a step change to electrification will cause our rates to go up, or to pay for the costs of whoever's paying for the bus contract.
That takes you to our recommendation, which is that at this point in a very limited funding environment, we do not think that it is we don't recommend to council that it requires that on day one, and that it allows the operator to tender on the basis of what they can achieve within the funding envelopes on day one, but then look to expand to achieve the national mandates over the term of the contract. Now, if there is more money available and the decision is made by council that it wants to make that investment, then that's a conversation after day one.
And yet we've still got the difference between the 74 million listed here and the 282 million listed in our workshop. And also when in the workshop, in the presentation, I've just looked back to it, it said in the LTP moving forward, there were no budget funds set aside for this electrification process.
Going through the chair, my understanding is those large figures that we had at the workshop included everything. So that's vehicles, infrastructure, charging, the whole box and dice.
Yep.
Whereas the 74 that we're talking about is just depots and charging infrastructure.
So presumably if I'm
they're different things.
If I'm a bus operator, I'm probably having to spend the 282 million if I'm buying the buses and I'm being asked to do the land and the electrification.
If you were a bus operator, you would be procuring buses to actually service the contract anyway. Yep. So whether they are diesel or electric, like that's a conversation to be had, and there is a price differential, I think, in that as well. But it's not perhaps as dire as I think you're pointing out. Right. I don't believe.
Okay, even $74 million spent, if it's coming in 2028, for example, is a significant rating impact, even if it's spent of a loan. I mean, are we looking 2%, 4% on the rates as a result of this?
But we're not recommending that, Councillor. That's not the recommendation in the report. We've provided.
You're recommending that you go to the private operator and ask them to provide all these facilities. So someone has to pay the $74 million, whether it's a private operator or whether it's the council.
If I can help, I mean, I think Councillor Dunbar-Smith is asking, what is the impact of the private operators contract for doing these type of services on likely bus fares or NZTA contributions and the ratepayer impact? And of course, we've got to go out to the tender process to know what that would be. I just want to check, Councillor Dunbar-Smith, is this coming from a view that you might not want to have electrification built into the contracts, which is a government mandate, and there's no indication that's going to change, is because otherwise we've got to do it?
Well, the other question is that following the workshop, the chair wrote to the minister saying we were not keen on electrification and wanted to know were we able to continue with diesel buses? I mean, why can't we?
And I have checked, and we did receive a letter back from the minister, and He says, I do not currently intend to review the mandate. And that he is a big proponent of electric vehicles and look forward to seeing our fleet increasingly electrify.
Well, at the same time as they're proposing to cap rates, and what I need to know is what is the impact on the rates for undergoing this process? And we don't seem to have any information. We've got very little information at all other than a map on attachment 4, which shows a vastly increasing asset ownership cost if we do it ourselves, but presumably the same trajectory upwards will be occurred if we go into the private sector, asking them to provide all the facilities. I don't think we've got enough information to it. So
Don't have a microphone.
Picking order.
Yeah.
No, there's 200 million in the documents and staff don't seem to be addressing that somebody's going to pay and ultimately the ratepayer will be paying more. That's what I think we're wanting to hear. How's that being addressed? Thank you.
Can I just add, like, if you look at the bus operators within New Zealand, you basically have two main players. They're not starting from a base of 0. They already run electric buses around the country. They already know what they are doing, hence the staff recommendation. It has never been my intent that we would ever own the land and spend that amount of ratepayer money either. There are different models to be looked at, and staff have recommended one of them, which is market-led. Once we go out to tender, we will know more. However, as our CE has said, and the chair has confirmed through a letter from the minister, we have to do this. Whether it comes through the contract at a reduced rate, so be it. But we're not going to avoid this.
And if I can just add to that, I just need to confirm it is not possible to give the exact costs of what it's going to be until you've gone to the market to tender, because whilst capital costs might go up, that might have a concomitant decrease in operating costs because of the nature of how they operate it. They've all got to come together, and that's why I think that we've said it's a future council that's going to determine what those rating impacts are going to be. To be able to go into a contract process, we need council to confirm and give guidance on the type of routes, type of approach we're going to take, such as we don't purchase land and whatever and put in our own facilities, such as we will not try and have a day one zero emission bus fleet, but it will transition over time. And we need to let the market come back and tell us what the options are and what the cost would be on it. Have I got that right, staff?
Yes, you have.
So the question was just, is it the council or the tenders board which would decide? This would be something I think under current delegation, Finance and Services Committee would be deciding, but I think something of this magnitude, Janine, would probably need to go to a full council.
Or did I lose? Oh, no. So I've got Councillor Nicol, Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Strange, and then Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. Yeah, so when I first read the paper on Friday, I got a bit worked up and I called Councillor Strange. But because the recommendation, obviously is advocating for an option for a variety of reasons, but I would like to have the lowest total cost in the long run, because we're a long run organisation. Even if it is just 1% of the overall contract, I mean, that's the same argument as just a cup of coffee, but 500k a year is a hell of a lot of money. So I hope we will end up in a place where we're not paying for a profit-making company to deliver, the outcome that we need to get to. But what I'm trying to get at here is that I had concerns that we were locking things in, but then it's things like what's being said in paragraph 69 and 70, where it's saying you will be coming back to the council This is just direction to allow you to do that RFP. And so that is what gave me the comfort to want to second the motion, for example. I wish we had started a lot of this earlier. I wish it wasn't all coming in at election time right now as well. But I can see that you've done what you can in the time that we have, done this in, and that as long as we are open to in the tender process to invite very innovative ways in, whether they, because it said somewhere here about requiring them to provide the land and the infrastructure. In my mind, that then limits you to tenders from big players. But if we are very open with our language, as you mentioned to me in the break, we will be in the tender process, that people can propose various innovative things, then because we're not locked in on knowing what we're going to do, they also aren't locked in, and they can propose a variety of solutions, very comfortable, that allow, bring you to that place of having the tender process with our direction. We'll give that next council the information it needs to make the actual decisions, which involve actual dollars. Yeah, so really happy to.
Chair, can I
I've got Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Strange, then Councillor Hughes, Councillor Marr, Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Clarkson.
I won't need to say much. Jennifer just said pretty well every point that I had written down on the piece of paper. I think what we're talking about here is protecting an opportunity. There are going to be many opportunities to focus in on the efficiency, the cost, the impact on the rates and all of those things. But that's not going to happen today. That's coming later. These guys have outlined a very logical, sequential process around protecting our opportunity. That's all they're doing. And for that reason, I'll be supporting.
Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a suggestion. I'll probably get shot down in flames. But we had a gentleman here earlier on today who did a presentation to council, who owned and ran the public transport company which serviced Hamilton and Tauranga for a number of years. I've just spoken to him on the telephone. I would like to suggest that he and whoever else he wants to bring into the room should be passed all this information across and ask for them to critique it on our behalf. Nobody in this room is run a transport company. Nobody knows. They've talked to various people, but they have never run the business. And it takes a certain skill to operate a set of assets, significant value. And I would really appreciate having that knowledge and experience, those eyes going over what is being proposed in this plan and what also has been presented to us in workshops. So that's my contribution.
Isn't it the same as the S17A review, like the other process that's happening alongside? I'm just keen to get that answer.
Through the chair, one thing that we were is in the report, I'll just mention as well, we have conducted Local Government Act Section 17A review. That final report is due with us, I think, next week, and that is an independent review focused specifically on bus service provision. That report, and that is with experts in the public transport space, part of that review as well. So that review has come back, well, what I've seen so far anyway, it's supporting the direction of travel that we're articulating here. It's also been, I think, a vote of confidence in the way that Waikato Regional Council has run and procured bus services as well. So those things are certainly encouraging. My expectation is that the report will come back with some suggestions for improvements and how we might do things even better. But to me, picking up on Councillor Hughes' suggestion, I would suggest humbly that report is actually what it is. It's an independent review of how we've gone about our bus service provision, and that will be available to council when we get that. I think it's due next week.
Will that be open to the public to see, so that the public can also scrutinise it?
The point I'm trying to make, I want to see somebody with the experience, the knowledge, and the history of operating a very successful business in the city, having their eyes over what we're proposing to do for the future. I think we owe nothing less than that to our ratepayers.
And you're not satisfied that the 17A
I'm not
review?
happy with anything that local government New Zealand has anything to do with.
Is
You know that.
the 17A is not local government New Zealand, Councillor Hughes?
I'm asking a very simple question. Either you want to support me
No,
on it or
no.
don't.
No, I'm just trying to get clarity because what I'm hearing you ask for is independent review. And what I'm hearing staff say is that that's what the 17A review is. So I'm just coming back to you and saying, do you believe that that's an independent review, that what you're asking for? Or,
I want to see the
no?
qualifications and the experience of the people who've done that review before I answer that question, please.
And I just had a quick question. Is it public, that the review report at some point, so others can look at it?
We haven't received the final report
Yeah,
yet, but
I just
it will
wonondered.
come to council. I'm
Imagine
assuming that
anyone
it will
could
be
look
public. Yeah, unless there's anything that's in there that's commercially sensitive, and I don't think there will be. So, but there is suitably qualified public transport people involved in that review.
Is it commercially sensitive who we engaged to do that?
No, we went through an open tender process.
The
The principal consultant is a consultant called Height Project Management. They are based out of Auckland. They have engaged other public transport experts to work with them on that review. There has been a comprehensive review of our documentation and our processes, and they've spoken to a lot of people about public transport in the Waikato.
Sorry.
Sorry, were you finished, Councillor Hughes?
Put that on the table, Madam Chair.
Can I get you to turn off your
In
mic?
light of what's been revealed, I'd like to delay this decision until actually seeing that independent review too, because we are being asked to make a decision to go one way or the other, be it PTO or PTA. What I will ask though is, obviously NZTA have a contestable fund, $136 million. If we go with the PTO option, does that rule us out of applying for that, any of that contestable? There's 136 million, of which 3 regional councils that are PTAs have received already. There's more funding to come. So 40 million of it has been allocated. It's part of NZTO. I just read it. So I'm wrong.
Look, I'm not.
Or it's not a. You're telling me there's not
Sorry,
an NZTA.
I'm seeing shaking heads. So can we clarify?
Contestable fund to help PTAs decarbonise their fleet.
Through you, Madam Chair, there is no funding. In the last budget in May 2025, the government in their appropriations documents allocated any money that was there, and there is no further available for that particular fund.
So that 136 has been closed down. Is what you're telling me?
Yes.
That was, I think that was part
Yes,
of the.
we talked about that in the workshop.
Yeah, we did talk about that in the letter, or in the workshop, and that was part of the letter.
Yes.
Because we said that, yes, you left the mandate in place, but you took away all the funding to support delivery of that mandate.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so obviously we're not entitled to any of that. So yeah, just my original comment then still stands. I'd like to see this, to see that 17A come back to us to help us make a more due diligent decision. Thank you.
Just so I can clarify in my head, the 17A, is that looking at this in its totality? Like where the routes are, the long, short, medium, long term, the transition, the land ownership, depot ownership versus operator ownership? Is it looking at everything?
Yes, it is. So it does go into a little bit of detail, and it lines up with the stuff that we've got from the zero emissions bus technical implementation plan in terms of asset ownership, and also it goes into some detail around sort of contract models as well. But I can say that everything that is coming back from that review is entirely consistent with what's in this report today.
Do you want to make a comment? Or
Through you, Chair. So I'm just wanting to add that we have recently conducted a market sounding exercise. So we actually approach 4 major operators in North Island, and we did socialise some of the contents that you've seen today in the report around the ownership model for the ZEB and the zero bus requirement. And what we articulate in the report generally accord with the feedback from the operator as well. So I think there's a high level sort of comfort that, you know, PTO would keen to kind of lead some of the infrastructure side of things for the EB asset. And as part of the tender process, we are also looking to engage with the operators around the network designs and some of the draft contract RFP. So we're intending to run a market engagement process leading to before we issue the RFP on the market. Again, we'll provide opportunity to work with operators to finalise our RFP.
I know you haven't spoken or put your light on, Councillor Downard, but as the chair of Regional Transport Committee, I would really like you to weigh in on this conversation.
Madam Chair, yeah, I found it quite difficult reading this report, even though I've been to all the workshops and stuff like that, just because of the unknowns. And there's always unknowns, but just listening to the discussion, all the different councillors today, and I think Brian and Phil, you've done a fantastic job on that report, you know, being frank and open on all the possibilities that could come about through the tenders, and that's what I kind of read into the report. This is mainly trying to future-proof ourselves in those in that tender space, and I kind of think back to the workshop where we looked at Manawatu, who the tenders came in, were all electrified, and you know, that took out a lot of the cost and on that council down there. I do appreciate some of the councillors with the unknowns and stuff like that, but I think we do have the opportunity later on to make those decisions or change those decisions once those more clarity comes in with the different tenders that will come in. I think there's 10 contracts that are going out for tender. Is it? Oh, 7. So, you know, it was a big scare in one of those workshops when we were talking about those numbers of 200 to 300 million and stuff like that, but that could all completely evaporate by going on the onus on the people that are putting the tenders in to take that cost underneath their wing. I don't think we're unique, and the rest of the country has been doing it and going ahead with doing some of these. So, you know, I'm definitely, you know that the staff have looked into that as well. As far as that report, you talked about, Brian, it comes out next week or, you know, even 2 weeks. I think the important thing is that decision's made before the election. So you can get on and carry on with that projection of where we need to go, because it's virtually, that's why we extended the contract. So it gives 2 years to really get into the nuts. And even the networks, you know, those networks, the way I read in the report, was that was kind of future-proofing with us in the tenders and saving us costs on, you know, if those networks then do come in fruition, that the tenders have already, you know, accounted for that in their tenders. So I'm kind of happy that to follow the motion in the second, but I'm also happy that if we want to wait for 2 weeks for that report to come in, for the other councillors, that's where I sit. Add on to it, this, you know, for me, there's so many factors, you know, like we've gone into regional rating with, you know, the emissions that we have to do by law, you know, the infrastructure and all that. And hopefully when these tenders come back, that'll answer a lot of the questions that the councillors have.
If I just could make a comment on the back of that, I think that's a really good summary of the picture. And I just want to say from my position, and I'm sure this will be a staff position, it is absolutely essential that we do get a decision in this triennium. Otherwise, it could be very difficult further down. And as Phil said from the outset, there's been a lot of lead road into today, and I would be encouraging councillors to want to make a decision in this triennium for the good of our communities.
Just for the record,
Sorry,
I
I've
support
got-
making a decision today on this.
Okay, everyone on the speaking list has spoken, so I'm just wanting to. I am wanting to move this forward somehow.
I'd
So
like to follow up. Warren, I think, made an amendment that basically we should go to a workshop and bring this back to September, and that the Section 17A report should be presented at the workshop closed session if necessary. So we have more information, and as part of that, I would like to see more detailed financials and implications for rating. I'd second that motion.
I am keen to understand, Councillor Hodge, where you're landing on this.
Believe it or not, all of the areas spoken about, except for the east, is outside my constituency. But in saying that, travelling around Hamilton and outer, public transport's important. It's an important commodity that we've been paying rates for since my parents were here. You know, we've always paid rates towards it. The question is, are we doing a good job for the money we pay? That's what the question is. Am I for this? Well, you know, public transport, some people do use it. It's very important. Is your routes right? I don't know. I don't live in the area. I just have to take it for granted that you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 you use, have done a damn good job to bring the paperwork to the table. So in that perspective, I'm happy to go with it. If you come rurally, then that's a different story.
All right. I do see a light down there. Were you wanting to?
Amendment to the motion.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Councillor Mahuta, who is online.
Kia ora, Pamela. I'm in just too public a place, but I put my comments in the chat. I've just come away from there to say if we, Waikato, happy to share expertise. We were the last contractor holder under GoBus. If to Councillor Hughes looking for community experts, we owned GoBus in the most recent round of contracts. So just putting our hand up to help. Kia ora.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
The issue is we're not at the end. And this is not the beginning, but it's a journey. So the commitment, I think, that is not being made is the final makeup of what may result from this tender process. On that basis, I'm prepared to support it and won't support the amendment because of the need to move forward. And while I accept that we haven't got the 17A, and I am most critical of council bringing recommendations to us without all the facts, we are not being asked to make a decision on a contract or even close to a contract. We are being asked to make a decision to facilitate the development and tendering of those contracts. And on that basis, I think we need to take a step back. I am concerned, I had a discussion with Janine before this item came up, and whilst we may not have agreed on the exact figures, my own workings suggests somewhere between a 4 and a 7% rates impact per annum if council takes on these costs that it will need to, be it through a contract and those costs are shown in the contract, or whether we pay for it directly through the ownership of land, etc., which we are not recommending. So until all that's crystallised, to come back to what I said at the start, we're on a journey, and this is only the step on that journey. So whilst I'm not sure whether you've taken that motion or the second.
We're going to handle that.
Yeah, I won't be supporting it at this moment. Thank you.
So I, instead of, if I hear you correctly,
Not that I'm supporting a rates increase either.
That it's a procedural motion, a procedural motion.
I think what we have here, I'll seek some clarity from the mover and seconder here, is that you are proposing to leave this item to lie on the table pending was it a workshop and receipt of that report, and then bring it back to the next meeting of council?
That's correct.
I would be more inclined, it's not actually an amendment to the motion, but it's rather a procedural motion to allow it to.
Thank you, Dave.
For the September meeting with some more information and clarification.
Who was the seconder
of the 4 to 7%?
I'll just quickly craft some wording here.
What's the impact?
I think that there is support in the room today to move this forward, but
I ask, Madam Chair, that the instructions issued to the persons or person or company doing the Section 17 included with the report, the scope of the report not included in the report, but the full picture.
Need to hear from Phil about if we delay till September, what the impact is.
Well, a decision this triennium is going to allow us to continue to move forward. There is a heap of work that we need to trigger as a result of the point where the decision is made. So a delay of a month will impact our ability to get into the detailed timetabling work, for example, and commence some of that early market work, because we don't have a clear direction upon which to seek a review. That all has a consequence on what we require from NZTA by the end of the year. So effectively, we're giving ourselves a month less to obtain NZTA approval, and we can't tender before we have that.
Whereas we could move it forward today on the basis that it comes back with any material information that comes out of the 17A or otherwise brought to our attention, and therefore giving updated direction to the staff. That's a compromise.
Can we do that?
Well, we'd need to come back in a workshop, wouldn't it? 17A.
Well, if there was a material outcome, is what you're saying, Councillor Smith, if there was a material outcome identified in the 17A, then it would trigger a workshop.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's something, the workshop can be had as well. And if there's something material that arises from the 17A or otherwise, then that would invoke an urgent paper back to the next council meeting for council to update its direction to staff. I'm not sure whether that would hinder or inhibit, but the reality is that would hopefully meet everyone's needs.
And what we're hearing from Brian is what you're seeing coming through in the 17A. You're not seeing anything at this point that would be fundamental.
Through the Chair, yes, so I have been privy to the draft versions of that report. You'd expect that we're right at the final, towards the end of that being produced. And like I said earlier, it does line up very nicely with the direction of travel that were articulated in this report to council today. There will be things in there for us to work on and improve and make things better, but the direction of travel is very consistent with what we're talking about here. There's no big showstoppers there at all.
And those improvements in direction of travel, the intent, even if we approve this today, would be that those would be incorporated, yes?
They would be things that we would continue to improve and develop as we go through. And yes, they absolutely could be, and they should be.
What's the impact if we don't do this triennium? At the end of the day, it's either going to go, no matter what you bring back to the next meeting, it's going to be a yes or a no. So we've got a plan A, yes, is all go. What's the plan B if it doesn't? That's what it's going to end up being. And then that's the impact. If it's a no at the next meeting, what's the impact to Waikato Regional Council, to the public transport renewal contract? What's the problem then if there's no impact, if we don't get it over today, tomorrow, next week or whatever? That's the most important thing is today. Phil has just said he'd like an answer today. We are asking them to go away and come back for next month. If the answer is still no from WRC, what is the impact for the incoming council next year? Obviously, with yous who don't make it back, and if all of yous who do, then you still have the same problem in 2026. You have to look at the long-term plan for public transport. You either do it this year or wait till you come back and still have the same fight while these guys are trying to sort out the buses for us.
All right, all right. But your constituents probably do.
So I don't,
Yes.
I
So
don't
we
think
have
we didn't have clarity from Phil about if we delay and get some more information to the September meeting rather than this meeting.
Paragraph 2 of your report.
Paragraph 2.
Okay.
It's in within the current triennium. So either or. Okay, well, I would like more information. I think this process has been not provided enough information.
So we have a
Point of order.
procedural motion. We have a procedural motion to leave it lie on the table. Pending, yeah.
I'm going to ask one question of Phil for this, just to make sure we've got everything in place here. Proposing a workshop on the 10th and the 11th of September, will that report be available for publication in that agenda, probably a few working days prior, be available?
Are there any guarantees? Can you guarantee that? Well, because if you can't guarantee that, I mean, what you're saying is this decision has to be made this triennium. If you cannot guarantee that, then
Look, I think the short answer is I don't know exactly when that report will be finalised, but just reiterating what I said earlier, that it is reinforcing and the direction of travel that we've articulated in the report today. So there's no showstoppers around this at all.
But sorry,
right.
so the 10th of September means we need to have the report with you all by the 3rd of September, which is Tuesday next week.
yeah, Councillor Smith, I really appreciate that you tried to to wrap up what some of the concerns that were trying to be addressed in the procedural motion, but I'm not getting any indication that there's an appetite to include those.
Had to move and second it, must be put at other business.
Are you saying I have to take the procedural motion?
We do have to take
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So just
I was
close
just trying to get the procedural motion.
Just in closing statements to my procedural motion, I do think, councillors need to look at this seriously and gain confidence from a peer-reviewed report. Indicated if it's as Brian's indicated, that we carry on in this direction, then well and good. But I think it's our responsibility to see an external peer-reviewed report. Well, there's a hell of a lot hangs on this.
And so my comment is that even if it's a draft peer-reviewed report, I'd like to see somebody else has reviewed this process because it's going to have major implications for future rate rises.
Can we put the motion, please, Madam Chair?
So we're going to put the procedural motion. All those in favor?
Vision, please.
This is the, just so we're all clear what we're voting on. The procedural motion that the item be left on the table pending a workshop on the 10th or 11th of September to be confirmed, and that it is tabled at the next meeting of council in September.
That's correct. I'll call your name as usual. Please pop on your mic and clearly indicate if you support, oppose or abstain from the procedural
So to be
motion.
clear, if you support, you're leaving it on the table. If you're against, we're moving forward.
That's correct.
I'm talking about the clarity of the motion. So it's the next council meeting at the 23rd. Don't have the council meeting. I mean, the work.
If we don't, but we can't have the workshop till we have the review.
paper. It doesn't have to be the final.
Yep. Okay, I'll call your names. Please indicate whether you support or oppose or abstain from the procedural motion. If you support the procedural motion, the item will be left to lie on the table. If you oppose the procedural motion and the motion is lost, then we will put the motion that is above it on the screen. Okay. In no particular order, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Kneebone.
Against.
Councillor Ma. Support. Councillor Mahuta. Come back. Councillor Nicol. Councillor Smith. Microphone, please.
You're supporting that it lie on the table.
Councillor Story.
Against.
Councillor Strange.
I responsibly and respectfully oppose.
Councillor Clarkson.
Oppose.
Councillor Cookson.
Support.
Councillor Downard. Support. Councillor Dunbar Smith.
I responsibly support.
Councillor Mahuta. There's no vote recorded for Councillor Mahuta. 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Councillor Mahuta, yes.
I don't support leaving it on the table.
Okay, so you oppose the motion?
I oppose the motion. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. The motion is lost. 7 votes to 6.
Move the original motion be put, please, quickly.
Yep. So just so we're clear, you're supporting this, moving forward with what's proposed. Yes.
May I get clarity just on 2 points? The two that delegate to the chief executive and just the difference between the zero emissions road map and then the transport activity procurement strategy. There's a difference, I take it. There's 2 different points up there.
Papers.
A quick outline of what the difference is, that's all.
Through you, Madam Chair, the ZEB roadmap is the non-statutory document that indicates to the wider world the approach that this council is going to take to transition to ZEB. So, and I explained before that the reason that we need to delegate it to the chief executive was without decision on that approach until now, that document hasn't been completed. After today, if there is a decision made on the approach, we can move forward and write that up as a thing that goes on our website, approval from the chief executive to show this is the approach that this council is going to take to the transition.
Difference to the procurement strategy?
So for the procurement strategy, I think in essence, it's just a strategy that we need to outline in terms of what we sourcing from the market. So this will be informed by the network reviews or the outcomes of the decision from today around the network changes. And then we need to include the procurement procedure. So in terms of the timelines and how we intend to procure. So it's more kind of a technical sort of document.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Madam Chair, I've got to go, but I support the motion.
You support the motion. Wait a minute. I don't know. Can I take that vote if we haven't actually
just put the motion?
put the motion? All those in favor?
Division called for.
It's not, in the case of there is clearly a split, it's not evidentially clear how that motion has gone, so I would suggest that we run through the division. Noting that Councillor Downard does need to depart, I will start with you. Can you indicate whether you support?
Support, because this has to be done before the election.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith?
Oppose.
Councillor Hodge? Councillor Hughes?
Support it.
Councillor Kneebone?
Support.
Councillor Marr?
Oppose.
Councillor Mahuta?
Support.
Councillor Nicol? Councillor Smith? Councillor Story?
Support.
Councillor Strange?
Support.
Councillor Clarkson?
Support.
Councillor Cookson?
Oppose.
The motion is carried 10 votes to 3.
Well done. And can I just acknowledge and thank the team for all of the work that I know you have put in to get us to this point. You have taken countless groups of people through conversation, through consultation, through opportunity to understand and provide input. You have taken councillors through workshops, committees through workshops, and I just want to acknowledge that you've done the hard yards. Well done.
Madam.
We all look forward to the next stage in this, and we look forward to the distribution of that 17A review so that councillors can have the confidence that that independent review has occurred, and any sort of recommendations that come out of it are incorporated into our way forward.
So, Madam Chair, you're asking for that to come to us, that 17A?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Let's see. Okay, I just am gonna test this with councillors. It is. Yes, we do only have 2 items. We do only have 2 more items. Can we power through? All right. So we'll move on to 7.4. This is on page 215. Appointment of regional on-scene commanders Celeste Davies Calway and George McQuillan.
So moved, Madam Chair. I think it's a great report. Not a lot of need unless Greg needs to clarify anything.
Got a mover in Councillor Smith and a second in Councillor Hodge. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
For 7.5, Madam Chairman, greatest respectfully.
7.5, this is the correction to the legislative reference in a previously passed motion. So this is sort of a tidy up. All right, I've got a mover, got a mover in Councillor Smith and a second in Councillor Marr. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
All right, and we dealt with the public excluded because it was only minutes. All right. Okay, so with that. No, we don't. We dealt with the public excluded during the minutes process. The motions that were.
Just to provide some clarity here, when we published the council agenda, the public excluded minutes were also published into open. So the public excluded agenda you're holding, bar the redaction of 1 sentence in the Environmental Performance Committee minutes, were all released into open. At the start of the meeting, where we have confirmed and received those minutes, we have confirmed and received both the open and the public excluded minutes.
But the minutes were already passed, yes?
So,
They were.
so if there's a redacted comment, then how do we confirm them as being correct without actually going into public excluded and confirming that that was correct?
But we have in the past received public excluded minutes in the public session. We only.
But if there's a redaction, Madam Chair, that means that they have not been published and therefore not received.
All members received both the redacted and unredacted versions of the public excluded minutes. Only the redacted versions were published into the open session.
So when the minutes were put before this council, it included, the motion included acceptance of the public excluded portion of it.
Just for sake of clarity, I can scroll back to the top and quickly just skim through the 3 resolutions. So if I go back to the start here, so the first set that we received an open.
So the only question Councillor Dunbar Smith has is on the EPC minutes.
So I'll run. So we moved by Councillor Clarkson, seconded by Councillor Cookson. We confirmed that both the open and public excluded minutes of the Environmental Performance Committee were confirmed as a correct record.
Thank you. We've had that process in the past. Thank you very much. All right, we will move to conclude our meeting. Yeah. We'll do that after we close the meeting.
I can speak to that at the conclusion of the meeting.
Just a clarification though, but these minutes here, I'm just being pedantic, they actually are different than the ones that are in the open session because it's got files down here going delegated, recommended, recorded. It's a better system, but it is actually different than what has been in the open session minutes.
And this motion has already passed, councillors. This motion has already passed. So we are now going to have Karakia to close the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. Unahia mai te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hinanaro. E te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, e whakaria, aki ke ronga, kia tina, homie, hui, tai kie.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll declare the meeting closed at 12:43 p.m.